Basically, not of Lala is cool, man, that I can really relax. Madam. Grand Villa. He left the Naduna Munantana Grand Villa. That's fine. Sorry. Yes. No. Actually, not of the basically we are looking for relax. So it's always going to happen on this screen. We have a mission. Media, Grand Villa. Is the best house in the Gambia. Beji and the Grand Villa Guest House. Na labu baby senyori, adu na boy baby nyarandiru kama ibela fila ila suwe taranyame. Until Grand Villa na kiliano na lafinyo wana mkaunti telkam. Na hiya sabati Grand Villa yala kodo na fakalamata. Hanima mola nyantazi jiyakunde. Grand Villa sada sewande. Oh man, this is like a paradise. I said I love this place, man. Trust me, I love this place. You come in somebody and watching you like, what you do, I need to come down. I tell you, I love this place. I love this place, man. Oh yeah. Nilifutana kuwa keso sotola. Futama Oljuntum Paradise Estate by Commander OK 7527218. Wale futana website auto www.grandvillaguesthouse.com. Grand Villa Guest House.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Bushby roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy deep tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security posts, and a breathtaking experience of our beautiful Seaview and Lakeview. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website at ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
Boy, janno CRC restaurant. Esa nako be minna dimbal. Nimba domoro kala janno. Domoro seneyata adiyata topotoro fanan kende ma bije. Luntan during tamala abeka domoro ki janni. Adi manda wala de. Teka we bijele anim fanan ka fa di jan ikono e fa. E ka fa minna ko pastry anim bakery. Iko fanan bakery. birthday number, conference number, workshop number, ye foto nilom dunia kono. Domoro betama nilom international otoda number 1.
Amange ba domoro jandama.
Esa dogo jam is atariya.
Awo mukubandi.
Sa nakko sa futandi.
Oto sa nakko be mu CK's restaurant.
Ndako na jannamu yak ni mande jambija.
Abang.
CK's Restaurant, known for best quality food and customer satisfaction.
Alright.
Honey, did you remind him that the last time he sent the money, it was not enough to buy all the provisions?
Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell him.
Are you guys talking about money transfer to buy provisions?
Yes.
But don't you know about Baluwo?
Baluwo? What is Baluwo?
Baluwo is a service that your son can use to send provisions directly to you guys from the shop. And you don't have to worry about the exchange rate.
Tell me how Baluwo works.
It's very simple.
Just log on to baluwo.com and shop, or download the app on your phone. You can shop on the website or using the app to buy online basic products for your family and friends. With Baluwo, you decide what your money is spent on. Your money, your choice. Buy online products for your family and friends in the Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria or Mali. Baluwo, better than sending money.
Welcome. Basically, not on Yala is cool, man, and I can really relax. What the madam? What the madam? What doesn't mind? That's right.
Grand Villa.
That's fine. Sorry. Yes. No.
Yeah, actually, lot of people are basically near local for relax. So it's always something that I can understand.
You know, for me, so what? Media, men are Grand Villa. It's the best guest house in the Gambia.
The Giandicam Grand Villa Guest House. Na labu baby senyori adu na bo baby nyarandiru kama ibela fira ila suwe taranyame. Until Grand Villa na kiliano na lafino wana mukawati telcam. Na ye sabati Grand Villa yala kodo na fakalamata.
Oh man, it's like a paradise. I said I love this place, man. Trust me, I love this place. You come in somebody and what you want. I've been doing, I need to come down. I tell you. I love this place. I love this place, man. Oh yeah.
Ni liftana kuwa keso sotola. Futama Oljuntum Paradise Estate. By Commander OK 7527218. Wale futana website auto www.grandvillaguesthouse.com. Grand Villa Guest House.
Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EG Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Bushby roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy deep tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security posts, and a breathtaking experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Sea View Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
domoro kadiate boy janno CRC restaurant sign nako be minna dimbal nimbe domoro kala janno domoro.
We are calling this this press conference to order. Shall we start with 1 minute of silent prayer to invoke the blessings of the Almighty on this very, very auspicious and important occasion? 1 minute of silent prayers, please.
Please, if you have your gadgets, can you put them forward before the press conference starts to minimize movement?
Justice Cherno Suleiman Jallo, QC, Chairman of the Constitutional Review Commission, Mrs. Awasisi Sabali, Vice Chairperson of the CRC, distinguished CRC commissioners, ladies and gentlemen of the press, colleagues of the CRC, all other protocols duly and respectfully observed. Now, welcome to this edition of the CRC press conferences. I believe this is the 7th in a row since the inauguration of this commission in June 2018. It has been an established culture since that time to have regular engagements with the media to keep you abreast of the progress the Commission was making towards the drafting of a progressive constitution for the Gambia so that you can relay the message to the Gambian people. Now, we at the CRC continue to celebrate that fruitful partnership with the media, and we want to thank you once again for keeping Gambians informed of the work of the CRC. Now, today it is not just going to be about process updates. We have done a lot of that. There is a product that the CRC has. Now, it is an open secret since yesterday that the CRC is launching the first draft of the Constitution, now this 15th day of November 2019. And it happens to be on a Friday. Now, it is indeed amazing, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that major events in the Gambia, whenever they happen, I don't know for what reason, but it happens on Fridays. And I can tell you that this one is not by design. You know, it is just incidental that it happens that the launching and the release of the Constitution is taking place today. So I take it to be a very, very good omen. Now, the other amazing thing that I want to say is that this draft Constitution is coming out at the same time as the draft estimates of the budget, the expenditure and revenue and expenditure estimates. And I keep telling people that the most important policy document in any modern state is first the Constitution, and the next most important document is the national budget. And both are coming together at the same time. And Gambians have been anxiously asking themselves, what is going to be in these two documents for them? How are these two documents going to transform this country? Well, I will leave that to the Honorable Chairman of the CRC to tell you what this Constitution has in store for Gambians. And during the question and answers, I am sure you would want to ask all the questions that you have in store for the CRC. So, Honorable Chairman, on that note, I would want to invite you to deliver a very important statement to the Gambian people. Thank you.
You want me to stand there? I can stand there.
You can. It's a long statement.
No, it doesn't matter. It's fine. I can do it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Omar, CRC Secretary, and the coordinator of this morning's program. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased that once again you've been able to join us here at the CRC Secretariat. Let me begin by welcoming you, the members of the media, to this historic dialogue with the Constitutional Review Commission. We have had many interactions during which we updated you on matters concerning the ongoing assignment of the CRC. And you played your part within the spirit of the partnership we've developed from inception in imparting relevant information to the general public. We remain satisfied with the partnership and assure you of our continued cooperation as we get closer to the finishing line to perfect and deliver a new constitution for the Republic of the Gambia. We at the CRC are fully aware that many, if not all, of our compatriots are waiting in anticipation to see and learn of what the proposed draft constitution contains and perhaps even more importantly, whether the draft achieves the goal of addressing their wishes and aspirations. I am pleased to announce, on behalf of my colleague commissioners and indeed the Secretary and staff of the CRC, that in a matter of minutes from now, we will publish the proposed draft constitution. The purpose of the publication, as we had indicated during our various public consultations, is to continue the inclusive and participatory process of Gambians in the design and development of the new constitution for the Gambia. The 11 commissioners are merely leaders in this exercise, but the draft constitution is effectively the effort of all who have participated and continue to participate in this development. However, I consider it important to take us back a little bit to where the CRC started. The CRC was established by the Constitutional Review Commission Act of 2017 through the enactment by the National Assembly and the President. This was seen as particularly necessary given the current history. These are considered given the history of the current constitution, which had undergone numerous amendments to the extent that not all were in agreement on the actual number of amendments effected to it in a short span of time. It therefore became necessary to review the current constitution with a view to ensuring the development of a new one that can stand through thick and thin for generations to come. On June 4, 2018, His Excellency the President of the Republic appointed and swore into office the members of the CRC, who immediately went to work commencing on the 5th of June 2018. Under the CRC Act, the CRC has 18 months to review, draft, and deliver a new constitution. That journey, though tough on many occasions, turned out to be a very rewarding and satisfying one for all of us. We are indeed grateful that we have together been able to reach this far in the execution of our assignment. Throughout the execution of our assignment, the CRC has been our guide, the CRC Act rather has been our guide, ensuring at all times that we adhere as closely as possible to the terms of the Act. Specifically, Section 6.2 of the Act requires that in carrying out our functions, we seek public opinion and take those into account as considered appropriate. Adhere to national values and ethos, and safeguard and promote the existence of the Gambia as a sovereign, independent state, the country's republican system of governance, including its democratic values and respect for human rights, the separation of powers, national unity, cohesion, and peace, the importance of ensuring periodic democratic elections, including term limit for the office of president, and the Gambia's continued existence as a secular state in which all faiths are treated equally and encouraged to foster national cohesion and unity. In this process, we were also required to afford Gambians, both at home and abroad, the opportunity to express their opinions and indicate their wishes and aspirations. In addition, we were empowered to invite persons to appear before the CRC to freely express their opinions. In performing all of these functions, the CRC was to remain independent and not subject to any direction or control. Following the development and adoption of various strategic documents and the hiring of necessary support staff, the CRC embarked on various forms of public consultations. We had the face-to-face in-country public consultations and focus group discussions, at which we had direct face-to-face dialogue with specific interest groups, including secondary schools. We also undertook and conducted household surveys using the Gambia Bureau of Statistics enumeration areas. We rolled out online questionnaires soliciting opinions. We invited written comments and recommendations from the general public and civil society groups. We had the external face-to-face public consultations with Gambians in select jurisdictions. We facilitated in-house consultations at individual and institutional levels. We met with officials of the 3 organs of government and had good discussions, as we similarly did with the registered political parties. We received a number of other stakeholders outside the country who engage the CRC on general and specific issues. We also received communication from external international institutions. In addition to all of these initiatives and efforts, we were able to benefit from the expert partnership and guidance of the International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Assistance, commonly known as International IDEA. I am proud to say that we continue to enjoy that partnership. We believe that the CRC has taken adequate strides to reach out to Gambians at all levels, to hear and learn from them, and receive proposals for constitutional reform. When the CRC embarked on the process of consulting with the Gambian public and other stakeholders on the review of the 1997 Constitution, we knew expectations were high in terms of what the people wanted to see reflected in their new Constitution. These expectations were clearly manifested during the face-to-face dialogue with our people. These were equally manifested in the written submissions we received, including in the other consultation platforms used by the CRC. It was only legitimate that the people had such high expectations. Our job at the CRC, in addition to listening and recording their views and aspirations, was to manage those expectations. We've made it very clear in all our public consultations that while we would take into account every opinion canvassed with the CRC, the reality was that not every opinion would likely find its way into the draft new Constitution. We got the impression that generally people understood that. On our part as the CRC, we have found the opinions expressed by the general public, including all of our other stakeholders, very illuminating and referenced real issues. Some were of a constitutional nature, some were of a statutory nature, that is, matters that properly should be left to legislation enacted or to be enacted by the National Assembly. Others related to issues of policy and clear failures of implementation of existing laws. Our remit at the CRC is to deal with constitutional law issues. However, our report, which will accompany the final draft of the new Constitution, will, where considered appropriate, reference the non-constitutional issues that have been raised so that the authorities concerned become aware of them if they are not already, and hopefully take necessary steps to address the people's concerns. As already noted, one of the guiding principles for the CRC under the CRC Act is to seek public opinion and take into account such proposals as it considers appropriate. On the one hand, the CRC is expected to consult with and consider public opinion. On the other hand, it is expected to factor into the draft Constitution such opinions as it considers appropriate. Ordinarily, this is not always the easiest to do. In our case, the burden has been lightened by the multiplicity of excellent ideas we have received from the public. In reviewing the current Constitution, we also have an obligation to consider international treaties that the Gambia is a party to, and consequently under which it has certain legal obligations. Furthermore, we have to consider what constitutes international best practice in relation to certain specific subject matters. We also have an obligation to adhere to national values and ethos, as provided in Section 6(2)(c) of the CRC Act. The end result of taking all these elements into account is that what may in certain cases constitute public opinion may not necessarily translate into a constitutional text. Yet, on the other hand, what constitutes international best practice may not necessarily become a constitutional requirement if, all things considered, it does not represent the national values and ethos of the Gambia. I say these things simply to make the point that we have thoroughly considered all the relevant variables in arriving at decisions with respect to the draft constitution. Our team of statisticians, under the guidance and direction of the former head of programs, has been vigorous in collecting, collating, and tabulating all data received to establish the public opinion canvassed. For all the various platforms used to consult with the general public, the team was able to provide the quantitative and qualitative analysis of the collected data to map out the areas in which the strength of opinion lies. The CRC has in turn relied on that data to determine the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people, contrasting that against the Gambia's treaty obligations and international best practice. Weight has been given to national values and ethos. In terms of what's new in the draft constitution, the draft constitution comprises 20 chapters. That is 3 chapters less than what is contained in the current constitution. It has a total of 315 clauses. And perhaps I should pause here to state that some of our compatriots, particularly those in the diaspora, had expressed the wish for a leaner constitution. We took note of their wishes and carried out research into comparable jurisdictions. We have come to the conclusion that while a leaner constitution may be desirable, it ought not to be the yardstick by which we measure the strength and effectiveness of the Constitution. We have taken into account the fact that we have a young democracy with not so strong institutions, and the need to ensure one of the things we have attempted to rectify in the draft Constitution, and the need to ensure clarity. Many of the recent constitutions we have considered, especially those in Africa, have chosen the path of strengthening democratic governance with a good measure of clarity. We therefore have the option of taking the approach of a leaner constitution that leaves much to statutory development and legal interpretations, or concentrating on teasing out issues that are fundamental to the development of our young democracy, irrespective of the size of the Constitution. We have equally considered the general public opinion canvassed with the CRC, especially by our rural communities, to have a constitution that is crafted in simple language and easier to read and understand. In this context, we have chosen the latter approach, shying away from the danger of leaving too many fundamental issues to interpretation. Each chapter of the draft constitution addresses a different issue, although in some instances certain chapters have a correlation with provisions contained in other chapters. Appropriate sectional references and cross-references are made where necessary in order to ensure clarity and or avoid or prevent inconsistencies. These are necessary aspects of drafting. In essence, the draft constitution we present to the Gambian public today is the embodiment, as we have been able to discern from the opinions canvassed with the CRC, of the people of the Gambia. We have crafted them in a manner that we consider best represents constitutionalism in our young democracy as we look forward into the future. The draft constitution has a preamble which revises the preamble of the current constitution to embody elements considered fundamental to the constitution, including placing emphasis on respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights and freedoms. It also places emphasis on good governance, separation of powers, sustainable environment and equitable distribution and use of resources, and equality before the law. In terms of what is new in the draft constitution, and I'm sure that's an area many will be interested in, the following may be noted, though they are not comprehensive in themselves. So you'll have to read the actual draft of the Constitution to get the bigger picture. In the first chapter, we're dealing with the Republic and sovereignty of the people. Specific provision is made to declare the Gambia as a multi-party democratic state that is founded on respect for the rule of law and the national values and principles of governance enshrined in the Constitution. In addition, it identifies the three organs of government, namely the executive, legislature, and the judiciary, to whom the sovereign power of the people is delegated, and on whose behalf that power must be exercised for the welfare and prosperity of the people. We also take account, and the emphasis is placed by the people on empowering local government authorities and the importance of devolution of government. Chapter 2 of the draft constitution clarifies that a treaty the Gambia has entered into does not automatically become law unless it is transposed into domestic legislation. The courts are empowered to have due regard to international human rights treaties that the Gambia is a party to, where that is considered necessary to aid the interpretation or application of a provision of this constitution with respect to any right or freedom. The core area of public opinion, however, centered on issues relative to the values of Gambians as a people and concerns for good governance. In that regard, we found it necessary and have created a new chapter on national values and principles of governance and a new chapter 5 on leadership and integrity, which bind all state organs, local government authorities, public officers, and all other persons, whether holding elective office or otherwise, or merely having some form of relationship with the government. Specific provision is made outlining the duties and obligations of citizens, including the duty to protect and preserve public property, and to expose or engage in any lawful act to prevent the misuse and waste of public funds and property. Accordingly, any person who is engaged in that endeavor is protected against any form of prosecution. Chapter 4 deals with citizenship. In addition to preserving the existing citizenship of Gambians, provision is made to remove the distinction between Gambians born within and outside the country. That is citizenship by birth and citizenship by descent. The Commission sees no value in this artificial distinction, when in reality they enjoy the same status and privilege as citizens. In this vein, any person born of parents, one of whom is a citizen of the Gambia, is to be treated as having the status of a citizen by birth. In equal measure, a child of not more than 8 years found in the Gambia with unknown parents is to be presumed to be a citizen by birth. In relation to non-Gambians who have lived in the country for 15 years or upwards and wish to naturalize, they no longer have to give up their original citizenship if, based on the laws of their country of origin, a Gambian can naturalize without giving up his or her Gambian citizenship. This applies the principle of reciprocity. A non-Gambian man or woman who is married to a citizen of the Gambia and had, since the marriage, been ordinarily resident in the country is entitled to be registered as a citizen of the Gambia upon application. A non-Gambian child who is adopted by a Gambian parent is entitled on application to be registered as a citizen of the Gambia. Generally, Gambians were of the opinion that a child born in the Gambia of non-Gambian parents should be accorded automatic citizenship. The Commission considered the resource implications of such a measure, which requires further in-depth research and assessment, which the Commission could not do having regard to the tight time frame within which it has to deliver on its mandate. It, however, giving due regard to the public's views on the subject, empowers in the draft constitution the National Assembly to consider registration as a citizen of the Gambia of a person who, on or before 15th November 2019, was born in the Gambia of non-Gambian parents, if the person had, since his or her birth, lived in the Gambia. This will allow sufficient time to carry out the necessary research and assessment on the resource implications to take an informed decision. The Commission further formed the considered view that in order not to open the floodgates to citizenship without a thorough consideration of the resource implications, this process should be limited to children born in the Gambia to non-Gambian parents as at today's date. The National Assembly is further empowered to enact legislation where it considers it necessary to enable other persons to acquire citizenship of the Gambia if they are not eligible to become citizens under the draft constitution. This may include persons who fall within the category of descendants of African slaves, who made strong submissions to the CRC to be considered for some form of fast-track citizenship. In Chapter 5 on leadership and integrity, provision is made to the effect that a gift to a public officer, which includes any person occupying elective office, on a public or official occasion or on account of the office he or she holds, is a gift or donation to the state or the institution he or she represents, and shall be handed to the state or the institution concerned. Chapter 6 provides general principles relative to respect for fundamental human rights and freedoms, and incorporates economic and social rights, including provisions on the rights of the elderly, right of access to information, right to a clean environment, right to fair labor practices, rights of the youth, right to development, consumer protection rights, rights of the sick, and duty to ensure gender balance and fair representation across all government institutions. The right to education is elaborated on to provide such right to extend to free education up to secondary school level. The right to free tertiary education, including university level, is provided for, but to be attained progressively. The rights relating to communication and the media are now made part of the chapter on fundamental rights and freedoms and elaborated on. All these rights are in addition to the fundamental rights and freedoms enshrined in the current Constitution and may be described as justiciable. Consequently, the Commission has dispensed with the chapter in the current Constitution on the directive principles of state policy. Chapter 7 relates to the representation of the people and outlines general principles of the electoral system and makes further provision requiring a continuous voter registration system of eligible voters and eligibility to contest elections as an independent candidate. The current Independent Electoral Commission is being transformed into the Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission, so from IEC to IBEC, and given the constitutional authority for the delineation of electoral boundaries. The IBEC's functions are outlined, including the method of boundaries delineation. The obligation of political parties to declare to the public their revenues and assets, and the sources of those revenues and assets is provided. This is in addition to publishing to the public annually their audited accounts within 6 months of the end of the financial year. Failing with the Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission may deregister a defaulting political party. Only citizens of the Gambia may make contributions or donations to a political party registered in the country. The candidates of each political party contesting National Assembly elections must be made up of at least 10% youth. The executive is provided for in Chapter 8 and makes the following new provisions. Where the President takes a decision or issues a directive in the performance of any function under this Constitution or an act of the National Assembly, the decision or directive must be in writing and must bear the seal and signature of the President. Where the signature of the President is required on any instrument, the signature must be confirmed by the public seal. Where a person acts or purports to act on a decision made or a directive given by the President, which does not comply with these two requirements, the person will be personally liable if any loss or other harm results to the state as a consequence of his or her action. Election to the office of President is to be held 3 weeks before the end of the term of the incumbent President, and the winner of the election to the office of President assumes office on the day after the date of expiry of the incumbent President's term of office. All candidates for election to the office of President and National Assembly elections are required to declare their assets to the Anti-Corruption Commission at least 21 days before the elections. The Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission is required as soon as possible, but in any case not beyond 72 hours after the polls are closed, to declare the result of the presidential election and the winner thereof. Amongst other required qualifications for election to the office of President, A candidate must hold a minimum of an undergraduate degree plus 5 years work experience after the date of attaining that degree, or hold a minimum of a senior secondary school certificate or its equivalent plus 12 years work experience after the date of attaining that certificate. A candidate for election to the office of president is elected if the candidate has received more than half of all the votes validly cast in the election. That is the absolute majority of 50% plus 1 vote. The president cannot hold office for more than 2 terms of 5 years each, whether or not the terms are consecutive. The president is to declare his or her assets within 3 months of assuming office and must similarly declare those of his or her spouse. The same process is repeated within 3 months of demitting office in respect of the assets acquired since assuming the presidency, and that includes the spouse as well. The vice president and cabinet ministers will be bound by the same requirements. The president is prohibited from establishing or advocating for, participating in or promoting the establishment, or in any other way engaging in the establishment, directly or indirectly, of any organization or institution of a civic, charitable, or other nature. Considering the importance of the office of president, and as a way of ensuring dignity to the office and the office holder after demitting office, benefits are outlined for the president when he or she demits office. The number of cabinet ministers a president can appoint is capped at 15, excluding the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. The offices of Cabinet Secretary, Chief of Staff to the President, and Solicitor General and Legal Secretary are established. The National Assembly is constitutionally established, and the following new provisions are made. Only elected members shall constitute the National Assembly, and they are to be constituted as follows: 53 elected from single-member constituencies, 14 elected women, 2 from each administrative area. That means if you are not a woman, don't bother trying to contest in those administrative areas. And 2 persons elected by persons with disabilities from amongst the members of the Federation representing such persons. And there is no reference to youth, because we catered for that earlier, if you recall in the statement. Every political party has to have at least 10% of their candidates to be youths. That's clear. There is no residency requirement to be eligible for National Assembly election, although a candidate must satisfy the other qualifications outlined in the draft constitution. The method for initiating a recall of an elected member of the National Assembly is now comprehensively provided for in the draft constitution. Considering the increased size of the National Assembly, provision is made to enable the Assembly to elect 2 deputy speakers. The positions of majority leader and minority leader of the National Assembly have now been constitutionally established. The business of the National Assembly is to be conducted in the English language or in any other language indigenous to the Gambia, and the Assembly is required to encourage and facilitate the progressive realization of the use of languages indigenous to the Gambia in the conduct of the business of Assembly within 5 years of the coming into force of the draft constitution. Provision is made to enable members of the public to petition the National Assembly on any matter within the authority of the Assembly. The National Assembly Service Commission is established to deal with state staff matters relative to the Assembly. In respect of the last organ of government, the judiciary, the following new provisions have been created. Provision is made outlining the principles of justice. The Chief Justice and all other judges of the superior courts must be Gambians. However, provision is made allowing for the recruitment and appointment of non-Gambians in circumstances where a sufficient number of Gambians are not available for appointment to a particular judicial office. The Supreme Court is given supervisory jurisdiction over all other superior courts, while the High Court and the Sharia High Court have such jurisdiction over the subordinate courts under them. The Sharia High Court is established with jurisdiction to hear and determine Sharia causes or matters relating to adoption, marriage, divorce, burial, inheritance, or endowment, otherwise known as wakaf. The Qadi courts are to be transformed into Sharia courts. In view of the restrictions placed on a judge who has retired from office, provision is made for benefits provided the judge has served for a specified number of years. The composition of the Judicial Service Commission has been streamlined to make the institution more democratic. In response to the overwhelming public opinion to empower local government authorities, a new chapter has been created on local government and decentralization. Included in this is provision for the election of SAFO. The office of Alcalo remains to be dealt with in accordance with traditional lines of inheritance. In order to restore the tradition that abounds the offices of SAFO and Alcalo, a person in such office serves for a lifetime unless removed on specified grounds or the office holder resigns or passes away. Both SAFOs and Alcalos are prohibited from taking part in partisan politics, as they are traditionally the nucleus of community unity, peace, and stability. A new Chapter 12 is created on independent institutions and offices. Included under this chapter are the National Human Rights Commission, Anti-Corruption Commission, Ombudsperson, Auditor General, and Central Bank of the Gambia. These institutions and offices are considered pivotal to good governance and are constitutionally protected with appropriate checks and balances. Although established under a separate chapter, the Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission is governed by some of the provisions contained in this chapter. Commissions of inquiry are also placed under this chapter, essentially retaining the features of the current constitution. Chapter 13 deals with public finance. It makes specific provision for financial support to local government authorities and the need for public consultation on matters relating to the imposition of taxes to enable members of the public to express their views on tax proposals. A new development fund has been created for purposes of providing basic services, including water, roads, health facilities, and electricity, to marginalized groups and disadvantaged areas, to the extent necessary to bring the quality of services with respect to those groups and areas to the level generally enjoyed by the rest of the nation, so far as possible. Specific provision has been made in relation to public procurement for the first time. A new Chapter 14 has been created on land, environment, and natural resources. Provisions are made on land ownership by Gambians and non-Gambians, including the establishment of the Land, Environment, and Natural Resources Commission. Chapter 15 deals with the public service, and in addition to the Public Service Commission, 3 new service commissions have been established, namely, under this chapter, the Teachers Service Commission and Health Service Commission, and under Chapter 16, the National Security Service Commission. The Office of Secretary General has now been specifically established to be the head of the civil service and to function purely on professional matters pertaining to the public service. In addition, the Office of Permanent Secretary is also established. The security service sector is dealt with under Chapter 16, with the establishment of the National Security Service Commission having defined functions. Chapters 17 and 18 respectively deal with national youth development and the National Council for Civic Education. Chapter 19 deals with amendments to the draft constitution, outlining the entrenched and non-entrenched clauses. Specific provision is made prohibiting the National Assembly from amending the Constitution to extend the term of the President beyond what has been constitutionally mandated. Chapter 20 considers and establishes miscellaneous matters considered relevant to the proper interpretation and construction of the provisions of the draft Constitution. Specific provision is made to the effect that no power exercised or an order given on the basis of an executive directive issued by any person or authority shall be inconsistent with the draft Constitution or any other law, and any directive issued in that regard is not to be acted upon by any person if the directive is so inconsistent. And the draft constitution concludes with 3 schedules. The first relates to identifying the administrative areas of the country. The second outlines the constituencies in respect of which elections may be held. And the third schedule deals with matters pertaining to transitioning from the current constitution to the draft new constitution. Under the third schedule, the current term of the incumbent president is considered in the context of the term of office of a person who is elected to the office of president. Having carefully researched and considered this subject, the Commission has come to the decision that the current term of the current president of the Republic is to count in computing the maximum term one can serve in the office of president. That is a maximum of 10 years, 5 years each, not more than that. This is just a summarized rundown of the new elements contained in the draft constitution. We urge the general public to carefully review the provisions and provide the CRC with their considered and constructive opinions to assist the timely finalization of the draft constitution. We do not by any means suggest that this is a perfect draft, but together we can produce a final draft that hopefully will serve the Gambia going into the long future. What is left to be said now is for me to express words of appreciation. First, to the government and the National Assembly for seeing the wisdom in the need to review the current constitution, which had undergone numerous amendments, and to draft a new one that is people-centered. Second, to His Excellency the President of the Republic for appointing all 11 commissioners on the strength of the belief and confidence that we can discharge the functions given to us to review the current constitution. We can only hope that we are on the right path to vindicating that belief and confidence. Third, to the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Justice, under whom this project falls, for his outstanding support and encouragement to the CRC and to me personally. He has, throughout this journey, which is yet to reach its destination, been relentless in his support and even took the opportunity to visit the CRC office to see the environment. Yet in all this process, neither he nor any other person in government has ever interfered with our work. Fourth, to the Office of the President for their support in facilitating all of our public consultations, especially in relation to providing needed transportation to carry out our assignments. Fifth, to the Minister of Finance and his ministry for the timeless provision of funding to the CRC to ensure that we operated within the terms of our mandate without undue delay. Sixth, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for facilitating all of our external consultations, and in particular to their Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Salimata Toure, and our ambassadors, High Commissioners, Consuls General, and all their support staff in the countries we visited for wonderful arrangements to guide our work. Seventh, to the people of the Gambia and all other stakeholders, including civil society organizations, for taking their invaluable time to attend our public consultations, participate in our surveys and questionnaires, and providing written recommendations. We appreciate every single thought that has gone into their efforts, for it is those efforts that have lighted our work at the CRC. Eighth, to our wonderful partners, the United Nations Development Programme, International IDEA, and ECHO, with whom we interacted regularly and who either provided direct financial support or technical advice and strength, or simply stood with us as we journeyed to this date. 9, to members of our various technical committees in the areas of public finance management, media, public education and communication, land, environment, and natural resources, constitutional law, and constitution drafting and report writing. They all have acquitted themselves creditably and served their country well. I say thank you on behalf of all at the CRC. To our 2 external consultants, Professor Dr. Albert Fiajo of Ghana and Justice Willie Mutunga of Kenya, we at the CRC are truly proud of their work and support, particularly the sterling work in assisting us with our assignment. They both from inception. For that, we are enormously grateful. I end up with the last, only because it was and has always been the first. The members of the media. You started this journey with us, and you are still here. And you've vowed to continue that partnership right to the end when we submit the final draft constitution. You've done well, not only for the CRC, but even more for your country. You should each be proud of yourselves for the hard work and dedication to this national cause. And we at the CRC remain forever grateful for your kindness and candor. Finally, on a personal note, I would like to recognize the staff of the CRC, both past and present. They have been very supportive to the cause of the CRC. I know they've been quite patient, actually, with many of my demands and those of my colleague commissioners, and I thank them for being quiet with them to allow us to get on with it. Finally, to my most able and hardworking commissioners, I think I can address them directly. You have been my anchor in this project. I have relied on your expertise, your patience, and guidance to help me steer with you this constitutional review process. I know we still have some way to go, but I believe that with the continued commitment to professionalism, we can get to the end and successfully together. I want to recognize and thank each and every one of you for your very kind efforts. I'm getting emotional now. I also want to recognize Alaji Serin, who is here with us. Since we started this process, his organization, the National Council for Civic Education, has been extremely supportive of the CRC. Alaji Serin, we started the work together. We will continue right to the end. It's not over yet. So I thank you very much. I conclude by once again commending this proposed draft constitution to the Gambian people, inviting their constructive comments and suggestions to enable the CRC to prepare a final draft to submit to His Excellency the President for further attention. At this stage, I am pleased to announce that the CRC draft constitution of the Republic of the Gambia is published, both online and in hard copies. I thank you all, and may the Almighty God, who knows better and has power over all else and all other things, continue to provide and protect our constitutional review and development process. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the chairman and the entire commission need a standing ovation. Can we please rise and thank them for the job well done.
Hello, how are you, sir? Chair, sorry, I had another activity.
Thank you very much, Honorable Justice Chorno Suleiman Jallo, the chairperson of the Constitutional Review Commission for that brilliant and insightful statement. I think the statement will will help many of us who have been asking questions, what have the CRC been doing, will finally lay to rest today. The statement will be made available to the press immediately after the press conference. So my task here is simple. I will just now open the floor for question and answer session with the chairperson on the release of the much anticipated draft constitution for the Republic of the Gambia. Okay, and please, it's an important engagement, so we endeavor to put our communication gadgets on silence, please. As the chairman rightly mentioned in his statement, I will call it a voluminous statement, but it's worth it because it chronicles all what is in the draft constitution in summary format. It's a 20-page chapter with 315 clauses and 3 schedules. So, as he rightly mentioned, the draft will be made available online and in hard copies. And that is unprecedented in the history of this country. That is something we must commend the commissioners for. Without much ado, I will now welcome journalists to ask questions. Please, your name and the institution you are coming from. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm Mustafa Nabo. I write for Kelpa. I would like to ask 3 questions if I could. The first one is with regards to the issue of the Attorney General, Senator and Justice Minister. I've had an argument, this sort of argument a long time now. I've not had.
Can you stand, please?
Except that I would need my laptop. So I've had a statement from some very important offices like the creation of the Secretary General's office. But in the Gambia, you have the Attorney General, who is basically in charge of dispensation of justice, also serving as the chief advisor to the president, but also basically serving at the pleasure of the president. Could this office be made in such a way that the Attorney General Justice is separate, and that the Attorney General could in fact, as another jurisdiction, initiate an inquiry or investigate the president for misconduct, even while in office? And second, I've had the discussions about the issue of the part that is seeking to address the issue of statelessness. I suppose that's the agenda. It's a very progressive one, but it did say that if a child under 8 years is found in the Gambia, we will presume to be a Gambian by birth. But it didn't say if parents have left, say for instance, Ghana, and they are coming to the Gambia on an aeroplane. Say they are close to the Gambia, and they maybe in the jurisdiction, maybe they're not even in the jurisdiction, but close to the Gambia, they've left Ghana. Not born in Ghana, not born in Gambia, but on an aeroplane. What sort of, what would be, wouldn't the Constitution say, even if it's born close to the jurisdiction of the Gambia, he has left with order testimation? And the third one would be...
Yeah, and Mustafa, your questions are loaded. We might...
But I can let it pass. I can let it pass.
Okay, you can finish your final question.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
All right, Mustafa, let me answer your first 2 questions, and you know, if time permits, you can bring up the last one.
I can add quickly this one, because this one is related to press freedom. Can't we have a specific clause in the Constitution that would explicitly say that a president or attorney general or anyone cannot bring a law in this country that will seek to curtail press freedom, a specific state that such as insult laws, sedition, criminal defamation, laws that are not progressive and are not good for a democracy. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mustafa. The first thing I need to say here is I did indicate that the statement I made is not comprehensive in itself. And some of the questions you'll be asking, they may already be answered in the draft constitution. And if I have to address every single element in the draft constitution, I will still be speaking. So just to make that point. In terms of separating the Office of Attorney General and making it independent, you may recall that that was one of the questions in our issues document. It did not carry popular opinion. So we continue to reflect what is in the what currently obtains, which is the Attorney General continues to serve as such and also serves as Minister of Justice. So there is no separation there. And the Attorney General continues to be the chief legal advisor to the government and can sit in cabinet as well. What we have done, which I have not mentioned, and it relates to your question, is that we have now separated prosecutorial function away from the Office of the Attorney General and created the new position, independent position of Director of Public Prosecutions. So prosecution matters will now rest with an independent Office of Director of Public Prosecution. Now, your question about a child born on an aeroplane, if you look at the chapter on citizenship that is already covered, if you are born on a plane, then you are presumed to be a citizen of the country in which that plane is registered. If you are a Gambian, irrespective of wherever you are born, it doesn't matter. If your parents are Gambian, it doesn't matter. But that is the principle that is outlined there. In terms of the media law, I will say check first what is in the draft constitution. We believe we have provided enough measures. What we cannot do, and we almost accept this, is to make it a free-for-all on everything. There has to be safeguards with respect to every power, and every right or freedom given comes with certain responsibilities. And that's something we need to recognize. But I'll urge you to take your time and look at the draft, particularly the chapter on fundamental rights and freedoms. That's chapter 6 of the draft constitution, and then form your opinion on that.
Thank you. I hope your question is well answered. This is just to let you know, this is just a draft. You have the opportunity to look at it and bring in your comments. Just to be gender sensitive, I will take the lady behind.
Thank you very much. My name is Alijo from Cape Town. I have two questions. Question number one reads, what does the draft constitution say concerning the citizenship of an aspiring candidate for office of the president, and what will be the age limit? And the second question is, will Gambians in the diaspora be allowed to vote?
Thank you.
In terms of age limit, our consultation has revealed that the opinions were not unanimous on any particular aspect. But when we look at the totality of the data that we've received, we decided to leave the age limit to 30. That is what is in the current constitution. We did not get any strong indication based on the statistics we've received that the figures were such that it justified tilting that position. So that is the position. The Constitution does make provision for qualifications and disqualifications to contest the office of president. I'll obviously urge you to look at that. But quite clearly, you must be a citizen. If you hold dual nationality, the draft Constitution prohibits you from being eligible to contest for the office of president. Your final question related to the diaspora. Oh yeah, obviously, yes. Yeah, there is specific provision. There is no specific mention about the diaspora. The draft Constitution doesn't make distinction between Gambians at home and Gambians overseas. The Constitution just recognizes one category of citizens by birth. You are Gambian, you are a Gambian. So if a Gambian at home has a right to vote, you in the diaspora has a right to vote. And this is going to form part of the report. That, remember, this has to do with elections. And there is a separate body that deals with that. Hopefully, they will take that into account.
Yeah. Yeah.
First, I would like to discuss about amendment. Yes, that several amendments. So I would like to know what is your position on that. And secondly, as the CRC protest was going, IEC also was going counter. Right? You understand that many of the Gambians were voting by ballot. IEC plans to introduce the paper. So we want to know what do you have to say. What do you have in the movement?
Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of the amendments to the Constitution, like I said, we've created a specific chapter on amendments. And within that chapter, we've created what are called entrenched clauses and those that are not entrenched. It is much tougher and much more difficult to amend an entrenched clause as opposed to a non-entrenched clause. But even for a non-entrenched clause, the process is still not as simple and straightforward as one might think. So I'll urge you to take a look at that. For an entrenched provision, obviously, it requires a higher threshold as opposed to a non-entrenched clause. So I think it's the first time we created a specific chapter on that because we recognize what has happened in the past, and the Gambians have said to us very clearly, we want a constitution that's going to last. We don't want a constitution that we will keep changing or governments will just come and change every now and then. It's for you and the rest of our citizens and other stakeholders to tell us whether we've achieved that. And if we have not, how can we achieve that in a more progressive way? The ballot versus marble voting. Yes, from our own inquiry and consultation process, the majority of Gambians prefer to retain the current marble voting mechanism. But that is, when we looked at it, we studied very carefully, we came down to the position that that's a matter for electoral reform as opposed to a constitutional law issue. And for electoral reform simply because one thing we have tried to avoid with this draft new constitution is to put in provisions that are going to be susceptible, that from our own view, will be susceptible to amendment. If you put in a provision in the Constitution on marble voting, next 10, 15 years, nobody knows what's going to happen. It may require amending the Constitution. So it is best to leave measures like that in statute, and that's what we will be recommending in our report.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Cesar Taylor from Ghana Online News. First of all, I want to say a big thank you for your job so far. My first question is regarding your statement yesterday when you were making the announcement. You said this consultation phase is a so-called consultation. And you did qualify it to explain that in your comments. Is that an indication that the amendments from here on will be very minimal? First, that's my first question. And then my second question is that you have, since the document was issued in 2018, October, until when consultations stopped, 8 months consultation, 4 months took to practice. Now you have 2 weeks from 15th of December, 15 days. Will you be able to make sure you hit that, submit it as a New Year's present, the final draft?
Thank you.
Yusuf, you know what we say, man proposes and God disposes. We have our action plan and we have our plans, and certain things happen along the way in relation to which you have little control. Our initial promise to ourselves was that we would have released the first draft by September. And as we delved more and more into the issues, we realized that that was being overly ambitious. And it was best not to compromise, the draft that we were preparing for purposes of achieving what was the draft constitution will be ruled out for a month. And we will consult with Gambians, an opportunity for every Gambian and other stakeholders to review the draft and comment on it. That will assist us in finalizing the draft. So it is not the case that going forward there will be minimal amendments to the draft constitution. There may well be wholesale amendments to it. Like I said, we have put this across based on our engagement with the Gambian people and other stakeholders to determine what really constitutes the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people. What we are looking forward to are constructive contributions from members of the public, where they feel that there are shortcomings in the draft, to see and advise us how best we can resolve those shortcomings. I mean, going online or doing things on some other platform and merely criticizing doesn't help you, it doesn't help anybody. You know, so that's that's just like grandstanding. We are engaged in a very serious process here. You know, so we are looking for people to take this document very seriously, look at it very carefully, and where need be, make contributions or comments or suggestions or recommendations that are constructive, that are going to help the process. So there is nothing permanent about the draft at this stage. All right, that is why we are rolling out so that we can get public feedback on it.
Yeah, Amadou.
Thank you so much, Amadou Barry. I work for the Senegalese media, called the Media Star TV. Congratulations on the job. I have two questions. The first one is this new constitution, what show that it's reflecting the aspiration of the Gambians? Secondly, the death penalty. You did not talk about it. During your consultation, we would like to know what have you noticed from the Gambians? And the age limit too, you did not mention maybe the limitation and the maximum. You said the minimum is 30 years, but minimum, because some Gambians will ask that they don't want to, enrollment to live there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Barry. What makes us think that the draft constitution reflects the wishes and aspirations of the Gambian people? I thought I said that much in my statement. We use different platforms and to assist us with that process. And like I said, it wasn't the easiest of any process. It wasn't the easiest process to undertake. But we have obviously, experts with us who have done the math, who have collected the data and put it together, and looked at all the variables in order to come to that conclusion. But in addition to that, if you had been following our activities during the in-country consultations as well as the external consultation, all of us who have been their commissioner, we've been taking down notes. We've all been taking down notes, so we've been looking at those notes, we've been looking at what the people have been saying, and then making our judgment in an objective manner to come to that position. There are yet certain provisions on which the public said nothing. Some of them are basically, technical in nature. We had to review and research those matters and come to a determined position with respect to those issues. In terms of the maximum age of the president, in the current draft, there is no maximum age, and I will tell you why. In the statistics that we have received based on the consultations, there was no clear unanimity on any subject or clear guide in terms of what should be and what should not be. What has happened is that some have said, don't put any age limit to it. Some have said 60 years. Some said 65. Some said 75, 85, 70. So you have all of these elements working out. So we decided, and this was one of the last subject matters we've considered, we decided at the end of the day, we will retain the current status quo and then see what the public says again on the subject. So if there is a clear guide in terms of how to go about this process, that will be done. But if you ask me on a personal level, just as I've said in relation to other subject matters, the Gambian people know what they want. At least that's what I want to believe. If you are too old to run a government, why vote for me if I'm too old to run your country? Why vote for me? People need to be allowed to make certain choices. They need to be allowed to exercise their judgment in respect of certain matters. But that aside, the subject matter is still alive during this process. When the draft constitution is rolled out, people still can express opinions on that, and we'll see what happens.
Death penalty.
Oh, sorry, the death penalty. Now, when we look at it, yes, the majority of Gambians don't want the death penalty to be removed. But if you look at the laws at the moment, the death penalty is not prescribed in the Constitution. The death penalty is contained in statutes, currently in only 2 statutes, the Criminal Code and the Armed Forces Act. These are the only 2 places where the death penalty is prescribed. What we have provided for in the draft constitution, in terms of right to life, we made that provision on exceptions. But if the National Assembly decides to do away with the death penalty, then it doesn't apply. What we wanted to avoid, within the same spirit of making sure that we have a constitution that is not going to be the subject of amendments every time. Since this is not in statute, we left it to statute. In the Constitution, we left it to statute. Let the statute deal with that. If you put it in the Constitution at the moment, if decision is taken to take it out, quite clearly you'll have to come back and amend the Constitution. That's a scenario we try to avoid. And that's one principle. It's not only in relation to death penalty. In all the issues, we've looked at them very carefully to make sure that things that are easily susceptible to amendment because of certain realities, you don't put those in the Constitution. But when you do, the Constitution becomes the subject of ping pong, and that's something we try to avoid.
I think we are running out of time, but we will accommodate 2 questions. And also, for the sake of your viewers in local language, you might ask the question in local language. Our chairman is very versatile in those languages, so it's good to answer in local languages too. Yeah. Aliu, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Chairman. I am Aliu Sisi from QTV. I remember during your consultations around the country, people did mention the issue of having the president selecting who's going to be the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission and of course Chief Justice of the Gambia. What is your position on this? And also you mentioned about the requirements as to who can contest or who can be president. You mentioned about the issue of undergraduates and some years of experience. Will this really affect the current president?
Thank you very much, Ali. Good to see you again. In terms of the appointments, when you go through the Constitution, you'll see a lot of radical, reasonably, in my view, radical positions and designed and benchmarked on the principle of separation of powers. The chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, as well as the heads of the National Human Rights Commission, the members, all of them now, there is provision for them to be appointed by the president. But that appointment is subject to approval by the National Assembly. In relation to even the vice president and cabinet ministers, specific provision is made for confirmation of their appointments by the National Assembly. So we've created these checks and balances. But in addition to that, we've also provided the relevant criteria that one must satisfy in order to be eligible for appointment to certain positions. Because we think that is good for governance, it is good for strong institutions, and it is good to ensure ultimately that the institution that relates to those appointments functions in an effective manner. In terms of the Chief Justice, the President makes that appointment, but it's based on the advice of the Judicial Service Commission. And that's the case with the other judges as well. But for Court of Appeal judges, Supreme Court judges, including the Chief Justice, their appointments by the President are subject to confirmation by the National Assembly. For High Court judges, there's no confirmation requirement because we didn't think that was necessary. But this confirmation approval process applies to all the independent offices that we have created under the Constitution in order to ensure that the appropriate balance in government is brought to bear on those offices. What was the other question? Alu?
On the requirements for presidency, you said undergraduate and 5 years or more working experience. I mean,
whether the current president has done it, I don't know. I'll just tell you what we have done. We've looked at the representation from the public. We haven't looked at individuals, frankly speaking, because I don't think that is our remit, it's not our concern. Our remit, based on the Constitutional Review Commission Act, is guided by the principles laid out in the Constitution and further guided by the views and opinions expressed by the Gambian public. What we have also done is to create Schedule 3, which makes provision on transitional provisions. So what I can make clear is that if we are holding an office at the moment, this Constitution is not going to kick you out of office just like that. All right? You don't do that. Nobody does anything like that anywhere, at least not any of the constitutions we have seen and based on our experience. You create a transitional provision which basically allows a process where the current arrangements continue, but then over time you transition into the new arrangement. For instance, if the current term of the president comes to an end and he wants to contest the next elections, he, from that point, has to satisfy all the requirements for the election of president. And that applies across the board to every elected office. I hope that is clear.
I think we're going to take our final question because it's almost Juma prayer and it has been a long and tiring moment for our commissioners. Will you agree with me that they were here up to 2 a.m. last night to ensure that, 3 a.m. last night to ensure that we have this document well prepared for you. So I hope you will understand that and allow them to relax. You have opportunity. It's a good document. Go through it. Bring your observation. You still have weeks to go. So we take Jao and then we close the press conference with that. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Jao and I work for the oil newspaper. And I have to thank the chairman and the commissioner for a good job. My question is about the issue of the qualification for president. And actually, you made mention about the use of grade 12, have 12 years working experience. But it's very big to me. Where do you see, involved also working in the private sector, or you are in Europe working there, or whatever. And the other issue is, I want to know a little bit about the issue of, regional governors. Are they to be elected or be appointed by the president?
Thank you very much. In terms of the qualifications for president, one thing that has come very clearly in our public consultations is that somebody merely having a formal qualification, academic qualification, is no guarantee that the person is going to perform well in office. And throughout, people have said to us, experience is important. And what we have done is to emphasize on experience as well, taking that cue from the public. But we understand and recognize that in any modern democracy, some level of academic achievement is important. The experience complements that achievement. So effectively, what we have done is to make the provisions just like I mentioned in my statement. The experience, is it vague? Is it not vague? You probably are right, you probably are wrong. The position is this: we've put in a provision to say that in terms of qualifications, if you go to the Independent Boundaries and Electoral Commission to put forward your candidature for election as president, the onus is on you to satisfy the commission that you actually qualify. So if you go to the commission and say, I have been working in X country for 12 years or for 13, 15 years, the onus is on you to actually demonstrate that documentation produced and all of that. We don't need to prescribe things like that in the Constitution. But what we have specifically provided is that the onus is on the person wishing to contest the presidency to demonstrate that and satisfy the electoral body. That is the position we have taken. Are satisfied?
Regional governors.
The regional governor, oh yeah, you are right. The regional governors, we have looked at it, and again the public was very divided on it. And some have said, okay, we want them elected, and some have said, why elect them? There is no need for it. But when we looked at it, and we actually consulted extensively on this within government, and we needed to understand some of these institutions ourselves. Currently, the regional governors are actually public servants. You know, they are public servants, and they represent central government in the regions, so in order to be able to sensitize central government as to the needs or occurrences in those regions. They are not really political offices, and we didn't see the need to make provision for them in the Constitution. A regional governor, I think I've been told, is below the level of permanent secretary. You know, so we really didn't want to delve that low in the Constitution. We recognize the importance of the office as such, but we thought that it is best to leave it to the executive to continue to make that determination. What we have done is to create a local government structure that is well empowered, because people have said that to us almost unanimously. So we have to create a specific chapter on local government in order to meet the needs and aspirations of the people who have actually spoken on this matter, and in very clear language.
Because of time, I don't think we'll be able to take that, because it's coming to 1 a.m. Sorry, 1 p.m. We are almost at the end of the good news is that the draft constitution is already available online at our website, www.crc220.org. It's available already. Many people have access to it. Unfortunately, we have limited copies, but the soft copies are available online, so you can get them. And then I will also send the copies to the email addresses that I have here. And as a promise, each media house will have a copy of the draft constitution, the hard copy. For the soft copies, it's easy to access. Just go online at www.crc220.org.
The report, there's a report which is supposed to follow this.
So, yeah.
Now, what we have done, remember, under the Constitutional Review Commission Act, we draft a constitution and a report. Now, the report obviously is a separate matter, and that one will be available when we finalize the draft constitution. But what we have done is to provide an explanatory memorandum to the Constitution. So when you receive the hard copy, you have the explanatory memorandum as well at the same time. And what is in the explanatory memorandum is going to be embodied in the report anyway. All right? So you understand.
Yeah. Please, if you have the access to the online version, please share as wide as possible. At least every Gambian should have a copy of this. It's very, very important. So without much ado, I will now call on the CRC Vice Chairperson, lawyer Awasise Sabali, to give the vote of thanks. From there, we'll have an official group picture for the unveilment of the draft constitution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As usual, mine is a very simple task. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Chair, let me tell you something about this chair. He could be a bully, but it's always a pleasure and a delight to work with him. He's brilliant, and we were able to rely on him, his extensive experiences, etc., to guide this particular commission. He was just being humble when he said, I relied on you people, you are my anchor, but he was our anchor. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been here up to 3 a.m. to make sure that the people of the Gambia receive the draft constitution. We commend this document to you. Look at it, do a constructive critique, and come back to us. Tell us what you want reinforced, what is possible to go there, what you feel has been maybe omitted, but is crucial and it's a constitutional matter that should be catered for. We will look at it before we make our final recommendation to the President. Thank you very much for being there for us, and have a good Friday and a nice weekend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the vote of thanks. So, because of time, we will just have an official picture, commissioners with the chairperson, because it's a great, and I call it a very historic moment for the country. So, Chair, you and your team, official photo. Yeah. We will.
Abroad and want to build your dream home in the Gambia without risking your funds and family ties? Do you want a household name that is trustworthy and efficient? A name that will continue to give you updates on the project from the beginning to the very end with videos and pictures? If your answer is yes, then worry no more. Boss Construction and Asset Management is here for you. If you live outside the Gambia and want to build your dream home, then this is ideal for you. Just reach out to Boss Construction and let's start building the dream home into a reality. With Boss Construction, the difference is clear. We give you value for money. Some of our services includes the following: construction management, building equipment rentals, rent management, purchase and leasing, asset management, and many more. For more information, please contact 282-4945. Better still, send us an email, bossgambia@gmail.com, or you can also visit our website on www.bossgambia.com. Boss Construction, a name you can trust. Boss Construction and Asset Management, keeping families together.
Sampai